Alrighty, we're ready to get started here. I just want to thank everybody for coming to this session today. It's a really exciting session that we've got ahead of us, and I'm really excited to have everybody on board. Just for a little bit of housekeeping, so we everybody is currently on mute. In terms of questions, I encourage you guys to pop questions across to us any time throughout the webinar. We might not allude to them throughout the presentation, but we do have, as you can see, a Q&A session there at the end that we're going to be going through and working through questions. So we'll actually go through questions that you guys pop throughout the webinar. I'm going to introduce myself to begin with. So my name's Christopher DeGrazia. I'm the Director of Marketing here at Flexitive, and I come from a significant B2B and B2C background. The reason I'm on this call is just to provide a little bit of context and provide a little bit of marketing context as well of why we're doing this webinar today. And then we're going to go through and actually get Ryan to present his tips and tricks and walk through the Flexitive product. We've got Ryan on the call as well. Ryan's had 5 years as a graphic designer. He's got a significant amount of experience actually producing social posts, so it's really exciting to have him on board and really excited to have him. And in terms of everything there, we'll actually go into what we're looking at in the content today. So to start off with, I just want to provide a little bit of context of why we're actually posting through this call. So with your audience, the big majority of where they are is on social. So we need to understand and make sure that we're on social. And we're just going to pop into the actual content now, and we're just going to jump into it and go from there.
Cool, thanks Chris. So yeah, like you said, my name's Ryan, graphic designer here at Flexitive Design Cloud. I'm going to get right into the tips and tricks for this webinar today. So our first tip and trick is to use the principles of design. So make sure to incorporate some basic design principles into your social media graphics in order to boost your brand awareness and affinity. For the design that you see on the right here, you can see that we use some of the principles of design in it. So for example, in terms of color, we have our blue sky video background that complements really nicely with the white and yellow hot days text in the center. And then in terms of typography, we've stuck to just one simple sans serif font, Roboto, which is also easily legible, especially with it taking up so much of the design. And in terms of hierarchy, there's a very clear hierarchy in this design, with the main focus on the hot days text sitting dead center at a large size, and also bringing more attention to it with the dynamic animation that you see, bringing it into the animation sequence.
Great, beautiful. Cool.
And for number 2, we have personalize your content. So hyper-personalization has become a way of life. From Netflix to Amazon and Spotify, brands everywhere have been using personalization to keep customers engaged and loyal as consumers. And it's really just become the expectation these days. Buyers want to be able to access the information most valuable to them without having to jump through hoops to get it. And market segmentation will generally allow for better response rates and also lower acquisition costs. And on the right here, you can see just a quick example of a social post that was done in English and then was quickly adapted to French and Spanish using Google Translate. So if anyone here speaks French or Spanish, hopefully the translation is correct there.
Yeah, that's great. And I think this is, as I said, in terms of myself providing some content, I think this is, or context I should say, this is a really important point. And we've seen this trend come through, particularly within marketing, particularly over the last, say, 18 to 24 months. And I think when you're creating amazing social designs, it's extremely important to make sure that your content's extremely personalized, and you're communicating to those different segments and having a really strong understanding of where your audience is through your social networks.
For sure. And then next is going to be adhering to platform specifications. So unfortunately, each social network, as you know, has similar but still a little bit different restrictions and specifications for what you are allowed to upload in terms of file type and file size. So for example, you've probably noticed that Instagram posts are usually at a 1:1 square aspect ratio, but other networks like Facebook and Twitter, for example, use a wider, almost 16:9 aspect ratio. And then this also gets even more confusing when you also account for the fact that there are differences between organic and paid posts when designing for social media.
Yeah, and I know anecdotally speaking, particularly on the marketing side of things, when we're actually doing paid posts, Facebook, for example, is very specific about the amount of content you produce in say, your designs, for example, and the different platforms that each, or the different areas that you're able to put up those paid posts allow different size requirements. So I think it's extremely important as both marketers, as designers, to make sure that we're extremely conscious and cognizant of those different specifications. And I don't know about you, Ryan, but there's nothing more that frustrates me even as a consumer when you go on, say, Instagram and you see like a story post, for example, that's been done in portrait when it requires landscape, and there's that huge gray section, right? So it's being extremely aware of what platforms you're using, the use case for that creative and those designs, and what they're going to look like in the final product, and making sure as a designer or as a marketing person that your designs meet those specifications to ensure that your posts have that real cut through to your audience.
For sure. And if you do happen to make a mistake, those will usually stand out like a sore thumb with all the great social media designs that we're seeing these days.
And yeah, we didn't touch on it too much in terms of the context with this entire webinar, but you, with your audience, they expect you to deliver value, right? And with delivering value, you only really have one opportunity to go through and communicate with your audience and make a great impression. It's about making sure that if you're sticking to those or making sure that you do stick to those specifications. If you don't, you lose that chance to make that really great impression, and there is that whole opportunity that you have to influence and sway your audience towards your brand, create a really positive brand identity, and really drive home the message that you're trying to communicate through your social posts.
For sure. Moving on to the next one is going to be making sure you're aware of safe zones. So when building a design for social media, there are some areas of the design that may not be visible when the image is served. And in these cases, the social media platform will typically provide you with safe zones for the design. And the safe zone is essentially the portion of the design that is guaranteed to be visible when the design is served to the social media site. And when working with social sizes and safe zones, it's recommended that any information that is important to the design to be included within the safe zone of it. The visible part of your social design is usually impacted by the type of device that you're viewing it on. So for example, a computer versus a tablet versus a phone. And on the right, you can see an example of this. So with the top example, the desktop view, you can see that the safe zones were not adhered to. And because of that, the design as a result is cut off on both the right and the left-hand side. But we can see with the mobile design below that they did adhere to the safe zones, and we can see that everything that is important to the design is in view, no matter the size.
Sometimes I think also the issue is, and this is one of my favorite tips, Ryan, because we often don't see the actual implementation of, say, a social post that we may put up, or say a cover photo. And the thing about safe zones is you might create, say, a social post or a cover photo or something like that, and just not be cognizant and pass it across to the client, and then the actual post doesn't work within, say, a cover photo or the particular specifications. So this one for me, I think, is super relevant, and I think it's one that often goes missed as designers, as creatives, in terms of making sure that we adhere to those safe zones.
For sure, and it's definitely one of those things that's really easy to spot when it's done incorrectly.
It is, yeah, and I think that's with all these things, right? And that's why these tips exist, because when it's done incorrectly, it's really quite obvious, and it's quite hilarious sometimes.
And our fifth and final tip is going to be maintaining consistency with templates. So, like Chris said before, posting on social media isn't just about quality, but it's also about quantity, and posting often to keep your followers up to date and engaged with your brand. Templating specific designs can really help you to speed up your workflow, allowing you to post more frequently. So let's say you make tutorials on a weekly basis. You may use the same template for each of the tutorial announcements. And with these pre-made templates, your audience will know where the post comes from and what kind of message it's communicating. And another great benefit about templates itself are that non-designers can craft a quick post for social media by themselves, knowing that it's already on brand and approved, and not worrying about messing anything up there.
Yeah, and we didn't touch on it too much at the beginning, but your audience expects you to be timely, and templates allow you to do that, and being able to produce posts that are quick and brand on point with your brand is extremely important, because your audience expects you to be communicating and reacting to what's happening in the marketplace. So maintaining that consistency is extremely important, but it's also about being timely and making sure that your workflow is working in such a way that's expedient and allows you to be reactive within the marketplace, which is what your audience expects. And I think that's one thing that we're trying to drive home with creating these great templates is you constantly need to be thinking about your audience. You constantly need to be thinking about the file formats that are going to appeal to them the most, and ensuring that your branding is consistent across all your assets.
Yeah, great points, Chris.
Cool. So what we're going to do, this isn't our last slide, thankfully. We're actually going to jump into the Flexitive tool and explore an adequate workflow of what it takes to build out really great social designs. And we're really fortunate to have Ryan here to go through that firsthand and actually explain what that encompasses. So Ryan, I'll let you take it away.
Cool. Before we even do that, what you're going to see here is a responsive version of the design that we use as a social post. Probably the same design that got you to actually sign up and attend this webinar. So clearly it's working pretty well. And what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to quickly resize the browser. And you can see that we have this design to be fully responsive. So no matter how the browser is going to be in terms of size, you can see very, very wide, very narrow. It's always going to look good because we have a fully responsive design.
Yeah, I want to take a little bit of a step back there and kind of talk about not only social media but just multi-channel communications, right? It's extremely important to make sure that your messaging is consistent across all platforms, and creating amazing designs is not just necessarily for social media. If you've got a campaign that's coming out, to build a great design, you need to understand that it's going to be on all your different channels, and to build that with effectiveness and efficiency, you need the right tools to be able to do that. So all of this that we're explaining, yes, we're explaining this in the context of social, but it's also extremely important to understand that when you've got those multi-channel communications and those multi-channel campaigns, it's integral to have consistent imagery, consistent design, consistent messaging to really appeal to your audience.
For sure, great points. And just to add on to that, in terms of this design itself, you can see that we kind of use some of the principles of design here. So in terms of color, we used a monochromatic color scheme using different shades of our green brand color. Typography, we've stuck to one font, Roboto, but we use different weights depending on the importance of the text itself. We have a lot of contrast going on here between the large white title text and the prominent photo of the Twitter feed, which all sits really nicely over top of the plain green background and contrasts really nicely. And there's also a clear hierarchical system in place, drawing the viewer's eyes to the most important elements like the title and the phone graphic, for example. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go from our responsive tab over to our social tab here. And when I click that, you'll see that we already have, if I turn on only show active sizes, we already have a few social sizes active because we've used this design for to create social posts for all the different networks. So Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, all of those are active here. And what we're going to do now is we're going to activate a cover photo for Facebook based on the design that I just showed you. And the reason for this could be that we just want to highlight this event, and keeping it as a cover photo is a really good way for new viewers of the page to see it and probably scroll down and view some more information on it. So all we're going to do is we're going to navigate to this cover photo for Facebook, and we're going to inherit it from one of our sizes that we've already activated. So we're going to activate our 2:1 responsive size, which is very similar to the aspect ratio of this Facebook cover photo. And as you can see, it's getting there, but we still have just a little bit of tweaking to do, and I'll show you exactly how we're going to do that. So I'm going to navigate into this design here, and right off the bat, I was talking about safe zones earlier. So with our Facebook cover photo, that's going to be changing depending on the type of browser we're using or the device we're viewing it on. So making sure that you design within the safe zones for this specific design is extremely important. And with Flexitive, you can use that by opening up this More tab on the right-hand side and then clicking the Safe Zones button. So you'll see that when I click that, you can see in the middle of the design, there's going to be a safe area, and we're going to make sure that we have all of our content within that safe area. You can still keep other elements outside of it, but you need to make sure that all of your important elements that are integral to the design are within that safe area itself. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to quickly move around some of the elements. You'll notice that I have to do a little bit of resizing to get it fitting into the safe area itself. And then one thing that you can kind of notice here is that we probably have a little bit too many elements to fit onto this small size. So I think what we're going to do here from a strategic point of view is we're going to hide our speaker name, title, and speaker image from this size, since if someone's viewing this on a Facebook profile page, they're probably going to either click it or scroll down and get the more information they need. So this isn't super important to the design. So all I'm going to do is select these elements, and then in the layers panel, I'm just going to hide it from this size. and that's just a local change, so it's not going to hide it from any of the other sizes that I previously showed you that were activated. And now all I'm going to do is just move around the buttons, or sorry, not the buttons, the date and the time. And then I'm just going to have to do a quick resizing of some more of the elements just to make sure that I have everything within the safe zone. And you can see that I'm doing this really quickly within a few minutes using the other design that I've already activated. So once I move that up here,
and now we can see everything's kind of falling within the safe area, right?
yeah, exactly. And then if I just turn off our outlines to give a little bit clearer picture of our design itself, we can see that everything is within the safe area, and it's not going to come in contact with our profile photo here, so it's going to look really nice in tandem with that as well. And if we turn off our safe zones itself, we can still see that it's a nice looking design and it's working really well.
Yeah, and the thing with the safe zones as well is they're more of a guidance, right? So there's definitely room to include additional content outside those safe zones. When you have, say, a desktop browser that's going to be including more of that Facebook cover photo. But the safe zones provide guidance on that core content of what actually needs to be included and where you need to include it to ensure that your message is communicated as effectively as possible.
For sure. So like Chris was saying, if I wanted to include a little bit more of a design element on this left-hand side and just have the phone kind of opaque, that's something that I can do because it's not super important to the design, but it's going to add to the design itself.
Yeah, brilliant.
Cool. So now that we have this size looking good, the next logical step is we want to export this design for our social media network. So what we're going to do is we're going to hide our More menu, and we're going to open up our export panel here on the right-hand side.
Ryan, before you jump on any further, does this design have any animations on it?
Yeah. So actually, we added animations to the responsive design itself, and when we activated the social size, we can see that it's using the exact same animations. So it really sped up our workflow there.
Yeah, and the reason I bring that up is video is obviously extremely important on social at the moment. And as we mentioned, you've got such a short period of time to make an impression to your audience via your social channels. Video is a great way to differentiate yourself. If you think about even when you're swiping down your Instagram feed or down your Twitter feed, you've probably got half a second or a second to grab somebody's attention. Video animations are a really, really great tool to be able to differentiate yourself to your audience.
For sure, and especially when it's really easy to do. That's something that you want to add to your social media campaigns. Cool, so I'm just going to open up this export panel here and navigate to our social tab. So like Chris was saying, as a Teams or Enterprise member, you have the ability to export your design as a MP4 video or as an animated GIF. We're going to do a version of we're going to do the cover photo, and we're going to export it as a MP4 video. And we're just going to quickly save our changes that we made here. And then all we're going to do is click on Export Video. And while Flexitive is exporting that video for us, I'm going to hop over back to our Responsive tab just to show you that you can still export this design for responsive or fixed sizes as an HTML5 package, either as a zip or you can host it as live tags. And if you want, you can also export as static images as well.
And we mentioned how important it is with multi-channel communications, right? So although again we're speaking in the context of social here, and most social platforms accept only MP4, GIF, and static JPEGs or PNGs, HTML5 has the ability to be used for display advertising to keep all your imagery and your messaging consistent. As well as that, you can create content for your website. We used a GIF within our email, so being able to export to those different file formats is extremely, extremely important and cannot be understated, and integral for you to maintain that consistency in all your brand communications.
For sure. And here's just a quick preview of the Facebook cover photo itself. As you can see, we have about a 6-second animation, and then we also have a little loop at the end, allowing the viewer to see the ending of the design. So now I'm just going to exit out of this and go back to our Flexitive app here. And what we're going to do is we're going to navigate out of this full screen editor mode, and we're going to go back to our Flexitive hub. As you can see, we have a bunch of different projects here. That's because all of the designs that you've seen within this webinar were actually made in Flexitive. So that just shows you all of the different ways that you can use Flexitive to create content.
Yeah, it's start from finish, right? So every slide that you guys see in this presentation's all been done in Flexitive, and all the email communications and all the digital advertising that we put out and all our social media posts, everything's been done within Flexitive. So kind of the proof is in the pudding, as they say, Ryan. So we kind of see it through the whole way.
For sure. And just to go back to a few of our previous tips and tricks, when I was talking about personalizing content, Flexitive makes that very easy to do. So what we're going to do here is we're going to label this design that we have created as English, and we're going to make a Spanish variation of this design. So it's really easy to do that in Flexitive. All you're going to do is click duplicate, and that's going to make a one-for-one copy of your design, including all of your sizes, animations, everything that you've done within that design. And what we're going to do is we're going to change the title from English to Spanish, and we're just going to quickly jump into this newly duplicated design.
And this is not for just for a language thing, right, Ryan? Like, this could be used for anything, right? So you could be using any demographics that you use to target your audience. So it might be age, it might be income. You can basically create a design and then create variations on it extremely easy. Make slight adjustments or customizations depending on what you want to communicate, and then get that out to your audience really, really quickly and really expediently.
For sure. The options are endless. You can do different products. You can try different taglines. So what we're going to do here is I am going to change this text from English to Spanish using my very limited knowledge of Spanish. So if anyone does speak Spanish here, hopefully I'm a little bit close to what we want to see. So there we go. We got our Spanish text in there, missing a few accents.
Yeah, minus the accents.
We got Chris here with his own Australian accent, so
yeah,
that's good.
Exactly.
And as you can see, if we go back to our all sizes menu here, you'll see that the text change that we made on the one size has been applied to all of our responsive sizes. If you see that it's cut off a bit, all we have to do is go in and just make a quick change to that. And it's also been applied to our social sizes as well. If we just turn on our only show active sizes here, you can quickly see that this design is now going to be in Spanish.
And that's the thing with personalization, right? Is tools like Flexitive exist for marketers, for brands, for strategists to be able to really get down to that granular level now, and it gives us the ability to communicate messages to specific audience segments and create great designs in doing so. And I think that was always the problem, right? So it was always that mismatch between designers wanting to create amazing designs, which is so important, but then having the ability to scale it out in, say, different audiences or different segments. Whereas tools like Flexitive, and it's not to say that we're the only one, but a tool like Flexitive gives you the ability to scale with amazing designs, right? So now you can kind of have your cake and eat it too. So that's a really exciting, development in the way that us as designers and us as marketers do our job.
For sure. With all the tools we have these days, it's really like no excuse to not be doing these type of personalized content. And so the last thing I'm going to do here is, once again, I'm going to exit out of our full screen mode here. And earlier I was mentioning templates. So you can imagine that this is a very handy tool to use for creating templates. So let's say, for example, this design is being served on social media, it's working well, and we know that we want to use this as a template. All we have to do is click duplicate, and then we have this design to work off as a base. And we can do anything we'd like there. We can switch the backgrounds, we can quickly change the title. We can do whatever we need to do to adapt it to work as a template for whatever we're doing as the new content for this design.
Yeah, great. And that kind of brings everything full circle, right? So if you look from start to finish, being able to adapt those different sizes down to the point where you're creating templates and creating variations really easily and quickly, that's kind of the workflow, the process of creating these great designs, right? So coupled with your tips of maintaining design principles and everything like that, having that workflow tied and making sure it's as efficient as possible is going to allow you to churn out really amazing content.
Yep. And adding on to the comment about workflow, there's a lot of different workflow features within Flexitive to help you. So for example, you can use this to show what stage of the project it's in. So for example, this design is live, but we don't know if the Spanish is good because I probably did not translate it perfectly, so we're going to put that in review and get that reviewed. You can also click more to view when the design was created, when it was modified. These are some handy tools for designing for social media, because you need to be up to date and current with everything. And you can also use the language and country filters to filter your designs and just get a little bit more structure into your Flexitive workflow.
Yeah, which is obviously extremely important on the production side and the management and marketing side. What I will mention as well, you'd probably go forward from here and export everything to those particular file formats once you create all the variations and create the templates. One thing to mention, we do have customers and non-customers on the call at the moment or on the webinar. The ability to export to GIF and video is with our enterprise or Teams plan. So if that's something that you don't currently have access to, definitely reach out to our support team and have a chat. We can organize getting you to be able to do those exports. So that brings us to the conclusion of the content that we're going to present today. Obviously, I want to thank everybody for coming on board. It's great. I'm really excited to have presented this with Ryan. If you do have any questions or you want to reach out to us in regards to anything that you've seen on this webinar, we've got our contact details there, so support@flexitive.com. What I do want to mention as well is we do have a dedicated customer success team. So if you'd like to see how our solutions can be adapted or adopted within your organization, again, reach out to us. Even reach out to us and criticize Ryan's use of Spanish. Nothing's off limits. So we want you to reach out to us and have a conversation with us. We love to connect and really answer all your questions in relation to Flexitive and how we can help you achieve your goals with creating amazing social designs. To wrap it up, we will go into a Q&A session. So what I'm going to get, or what I'm going to compel everybody out in the audience to do is send us through some questions for either Ryan or I that we can answer and kind of give you a little bit more context about the tool or about what it takes to create amazing social designs. And we can kind of go from there. So just bear with us for a sec as we jump into the question panel and just have a look. Bear with me for a sec. So the first question we've got from Julie Hall. Julie's asking, what software do you use as a designer for your dynamic animation? Ryan?
Yeah, so everything that you saw in this presentation, so for example, the really awesome hot days graphic you see here, all of the animations were done in Flexitive. So if I open Flexitive back up and we go back into our design, you can see that we've used the animation panel in Flexitive to design this animation to work with, design this to work with animations, and we can preview it in Flexitive. And using the animations in Flexitive is super easy. You can add it really quickly. We can even make a quick change if we're not happy with the type of animation we see. So I'm just going to stop the preview here, go to frame 2. We can see we have it on slide in, but here you can see all of the different animation effects that you have available. And you can quickly choose something and preview how it looks. So hopefully that answers your question, Julie.
Yeah, great. I might ask like another follow-up question. As a graphic designer, Ryan, do you use any other tools or are you doing everything specifically within Flexitive?
No, so I'm not doing everything in Flexitive, but I'm using Flexitive to enhance my workflow and enhance my ability as a designer. So I'm still using other programs like Illustrator and Photoshop to essentially create the assets, like this phone asset you might see. But then I use Flexitive to essentially build out my size and then scale it, animate it, preview it, export it, essentially all of the important stuff.
Yeah, and I think that is just testament to what Photoshop's great at, right? So Photoshop's very good at being able to build individual assets and individual designs, but scaling those designs across multiple different sizes for all those different channels that you're exporting to is not a strong suit of Photoshop, right? So as a designer, you obviously have realized that your most important asset is your time, and sitting there creating individual sizes that are just repeats of what you've built on your first design is A, extremely tedious, and B, extremely time intensive, and it's just not worth it to be spending your time on that. You want to be doing what a graphic designer does, right? And that's create content and create really great visual communications, and that's what our tool at the end of the day is it's trying to make designers, allow designers to do what they do best, and that's design.
Exactly.
So we'll go into, we're just having a look at the question panels here. Ryan, do you want to jump into which question there? Ryan, do you want to jump onto?
So Jared, you asked, I don't see safe zones in our more menu. So there's a possibility that you're in a design that doesn't actually show safe zones. So for example, a bunch of the social posts, those are just going to be viewed at 100% the same aspect ratio no matter what. So those don't require a safe area outline. But for things like cover photos, perhaps even profile photos, those are the type of designs that you're going to see in Flexitive that have safe zones. And we can also send you a link to our article that clearly illustrates which specific sizes in Flexitive, in terms of social sizes, have safe zones available for you.
Yeah, and that's the thing. We might not be able to get across to all these questions today because it looks like that there is a fair few, but we'll definitely reach out after the webinar in relation to those questions and give you guys specific answers. And again, we have that support avenue that you can go down to reach out to us and get specific answers on questions that you have. So I've got another question here, and it looks like it's from Chris, which is a nice name. Can you think of any brands doing social really well to use as inspiration? Or I guess maybe I'll open up a little bit more generally. Like, Ryan, what do you use for inspiration with your designs?
Yeah. Well, I mean, for social design, there's definitely a lot of great brands out there. But for me, I think my biggest inspiration comes from going to portfolio websites like Behance and Dribbble and viewing what people are doing, because we know how often design is changing, what the trends are. So that's a great way for me to go and get inspired and also just stay up to date and see what's really captivating these days in this modern world.
One brand that comes to mind for me, and that's probably more so on the marketing side, but it's Casper. So Casper does a really, really great job of multi-channel communication. So they're not only on your main platform, so Twitter and Facebook, which they do really well, and Instagram as well, but they've also looked at other channels that they can leverage and been quite creative in those channels. So Casper, for example, uses Spotify even to kind of communicate their brand message, and they're using YouTube, and they have a specific YouTube channel, and they also use Instagram TV. So creating amazing social designs isn't necessarily just about Twitter or Facebook or Instagram. Even with Spotify, there's assets that you need to create and build to make sure that you have a coherent Spotify profile that's consistent with all your other brand content and all your other brand assets. And that's why it's so important to keep that consistency across all your channels, and basically why a tool like Flexitive exists. Cool. So it looks like we've kind of got to the end of all the questions that we're able to get through today, because we're conscious of time as well. Again, if you want to reach out to us, don't hesitate to shoot a message through to support at flexitive.com, and we'll be more than happy to get across them. And any of those questions that we didn't get across to, we'll definitely reach out to you after the webinar and give you specific answers. But in light of all that, I'd like to thank everybody for coming on today.
Thanks all. Have a great day.